What if the legacy of your entire existence, your family, your birthright, your children, was just deleted? Gone. Not with a whisper, but a royal proclamation. No record, no recognition, no past. That's what reportedly just happened to Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. And the world is still trying to catch its breath. Because just 3 minutes ago, Buckingham Palace issued a historic decree that could reshape everything we thought we knew about the royal family, succession, and bloodlines. At the center of it all, a father's chilling decision and a son's total erasure. But why now? And what does this mean for their children, Archie and Lilibet? More importantly, what was King Charles really trying to hide? Let's unpack this unfolding royal earthquake. The announcement that shook the monarchy. It began not with a bang, but with a sentence. A cold, calculated press release sent directly to royal correspondents, embassies, and select media outlets. It was titled simply, Lineage Clarification and Historical Update. Most thought it was just a minor records correction, until they opened it. Inside, a stunning declaration from King Charles III himself. A declaration that Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, his own son and daughter-in-law, would be permanently removed from all official royal archives, as if they never existed in the line of succession, as if they were never part of the family tree. Read that again. Not stripped of their titles, like before, not just frozen out of ceremonial roles, but deleted from history itself. Their names, gone from royal databases. Photographs, removed from galleries. Mentions of them in archived records, scrubbed. Some called it cruel. Others called it calculated. A few called it constitutional suicide. But everyone agreed it was unprecedented. And then came the line that sent chills across the globe. They no longer exist in the lineage. Words from a king. About his own son. But this wasn't just personal. This was political. Strategic. Historic. What kind of monarch deletes blood? And what kind of father presses a race? The world reacts, and the palace locks down. Within minutes of the announcement, social media went into total meltdown. Hashtag royal erasure trended within 30 seconds. Hashtag justice for Harry surged on TikTok. News anchors interrupted live segments. But inside the gates of Buckingham Palace, silence. The kind of silence that feels like something just exploded, but you can't see the damage yet. Security increased. Curtains drawn. Aides refused to speak. Even veteran royal insiders, people who'd been covering the family for decades, said they had never seen anything like this. Sky News ran with the headline, Charles deletes his son. Is this the end of the monarchy? BBC reporters camped outside Clarence House said the atmosphere was funereal. A single black car was seen leaving Windsor Castle. Some claimed it was Camilla. Others said it was Princess Anne. No one knows for sure. But the mood? Total chaos disguised as formality. And behind the scenes, the truth was uglier than anyone imagined. Because this decision wasn't sudden. It had been brewing for years. A long road to erasure. To understand how we got here, we need to rewind. Not just to the Oprah interview. Not just to Spare. Not even to the second Netflix docuseries. We need to go back to the moment Meghan entered the palace gates. From day one, she wasn't just different. She was disruptive. American. Actress. Outspoken. A modern woman entering the world's oldest institution. And bringing Prince Harry with her, away from the fold. The Windsors didn't know what to do with her. Behind the smiles and photo ops, there was a storm building. One insider later said, it wasn't that they hated Meghan. It's that she made them confront everything they didn't want to change. But Charles? He tried to play peacemaker. At least at first. He walked Meghan down the aisle. He invited them to his estate. He even once said, privately, she's got spirit. Reminds me of Diana. But that changed. And fast. Because when the Sussexes left, they didn't just leave. They talked. They exposed. They accused. They sold stories. From racism claims to family betrayal, Harry and Meghan turned the world's most buttoned-up family into a global drama binge. And Charles? He was tired of being the villain in his son's story. Especially now, when he's facing his own legacy, his own mortality, and a monarchy in crisis. So he made a choice. Not just to shut the door, but to burn the files. But what about the children? Here's where things get darker. Because if Harry and Meghan are erased, Where does that leave Archie and Lilibet? Are they still considered part of the royal bloodline? Are they eligible for titles, inheritances, or even security? Or are they now children of the non-existent? One royal historian we contacted for this investigation said, "This isn't just petty family drama. This affects everything from legal titles to lineage claims, even historical record-keeping. It's erasure on a constitutional level." Another added, "We've never seen this. Not even when Edward VIII abdicated. He wasn't deleted. He was pushed aside, yes, but still acknowledged. This is different. And it's not just about revenge. It's about rewriting. But why would Charles go this far? What was he protecting? What was he really afraid would come out? The diary, the vault, the secret clause? Multiple sources now confirm that the final decision to erase the Sussexes wasn't just emotional. It was triggered by the opening of an undisclosed royal vault just 48 hours before the announcement. Inside, unreleased documents, confidential correspondences, and, according to one anonymous aide, a diary. Whose diary? We'll get to that. But what we can tell you is this. That diary reportedly mentioned Meghan and Harry by name. It described unauthorized recordings, confidential meetings, and plans to control the narrative. And its author? Allegedly, a senior royal, someone still very much alive. When King Charles read it, he reportedly went silent for 2 hours. Then, he called a meeting. That meeting ended with a one-line instruction. Erase them. A family rewriting its future. Now, here's the ultimate contradiction. Charles spent decades trying to rehabilitate his own image, after Diana, after Camilla, after decades of being the bad guy. And just when he's finally king, he writes his son out of history? Why? Some say it's about legacy, control. Others say it's panic. Because Harry knows things the monarchy doesn't want public. And Meghan? She documents everything. So the only solution left? Erase the threat. Delete the history. Start over. But can you really delete blood? This is the question echoing across the UK and beyond. You can rewrite documents. You can vanish pictures. You can strip titles and close doors. But can you erase a lineage? Not legally. Not genetically. Not emotionally. Even now, as the announcement spreads like wildfire, millions are asking, what happens next? Will Harry retaliate? Will Meghan go public again? Will Archie and Lilibet become pawns in a royal war? Or is this the final move in a chess game that's been playing out for years? One thing is certain. The monarchy has drawn a line in the sand. And what crosses that line next could burn down the entire institution. Because just as the erasure was announced, a secret archive door was left open. And what's inside could destroy the crown. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Have you ever wondered what secrets lie behind locked palace doors? Doors that even royals fear to open? In a castle full of whispers, one sealed vault had remained untouched for over 70 years. Until now. It wasn't supposed to happen. The archives beneath Windsor Castle are protected by layers of protocol. Armed guards, temperature-controlled vaults, and a rota of elite royal archivists sworn to secrecy. Not even the reigning monarch is allowed to open certain rooms without 2 other witnesses from the Privy Council. So why, on the night before the erasure announcement, was the midnight seal broken? And what, exactly, did they find? Because according to one insider, that vault held a time bomb. A time bomb with Meghan and Harry's names written all over it. The alarm no one expected. It started at 2:13 a.m. A silent alarm triggered from Vault C9, deep beneath Windsor. Known internally as the Queen Mary Chamber, it's one of the most tightly secured archive rooms in the monarchy's possession, home to handwritten letters, bloodline documents, and sealed correspondences from Queen Victoria to King George VI. This room doesn't open without cause. Yet somehow, that night it did. Emergency protocols kicked in. Within 7 minutes, a security team in black fatigues had descended into the archive corridor. But what they found surprised even them. Not an intruder, but a group of 3 senior royal archivists. Calm, silent, waiting with a single document box. And in their hand, a clearance order, signed by King Charles III just hours earlier. It was marked Top Line 77 and stamped with a blood-red seal. The seal that hadn't been used in decades. Top Line 77. The code that shouldn't exist. Here's where things take a turn. Top Line 77 isn't a term the public has heard before. But inside the palace, it refers to a rarely used protocol, one reserved for situations that could permanently alter the official record of royal lineage. Not clarify it, alter it, as in rewrite history. The last time this code was invoked? According to one palace mole, it was during the Cold War, when letters surfaced suggesting a potential illegitimate child of King Edward VIII. Those letters were never seen again. So when Topline 77 was suddenly reactivated, archivists knew something big was about to go down. But no one could have predicted what came next. Because when they opened the box from Vault C9, they found something that hadn't been touched since 1997. A sealed diary, bound in black leather, edges worn, and a golden clasp broken from what appeared to be forceful opening decades ago. And next to it, a parchment envelope, marked in fading ink, to be opened only upon confirmation of severance. Inside, a single sheet of vellum, a statement handwritten in swirling cursive, and at the bottom, 2 words that chilled the archivists to the bone. They warned me. Who wrote it, and what it means. Here's where things explode into royal thriller territory. Because while the palace has refused to comment on the authorship of the letter, 3 separate whistleblowers, including a former assistant private secretary, confirmed the signature. Queen Elizabeth II, the late monarch, the beloved sovereign who reigned for over 70 years. The woman who always kept the peace, allegedly left behind a secret message for her son. And it wasn't a blessing. It was a warning. The contents of the statement are classified, but according to our source, the final line read, "If they should ever divide the house, their names must not endure." Wait, their names must not endure? Was Elizabeth warning about Harry and Meghan? Or about something? Or someone else entirely? Was this a personal betrayal? Or part of a greater dynastic prophecy? Because based on that wording, it wasn't just about scandal. It was about the House of Windsor surviving. And King Charles took the message seriously. He didn't hesitate. He made his move. Why that vault matters? Let's pause for a second. Because you might be wondering, why would the palace keep a document like this hidden for decades? Simple. Because documents like this are nuclear. If made public, they threaten the stability of the crown. They raise questions about past decisions, past rulers, past bloodlines. And in monarchies, bloodlines are everything. You mess with the tree, you mess with the kingdom. But now, that tree had a rotten branch. And Charles? He just took an axe to it. But here's the contradiction that no one in the palace wants to talk about. If this was about loyalty, why erase your own son? Why not censure him? Reprimand him? Keep him at arm's length, the way the crown always has with problem royals? Why go nuclear? Unless the contents of that diary included something far more dangerous than rebellion. Something tied to secrets that go back to Diana. The archivist speaks, but then disappears. Just before dawn, one of the 3 archivists who handled the documents leaked a voice note to a trusted journalist. It was encrypted, scrambled, but transcribed. It read, "We opened the box. It was real." She knew. She always knew. I saw the name. I wish I hadn't. I think I'm being followed now. The next morning, the archivist was gone. Resigned from their post. Personal email deleted. Flat emptied. Gone. No official explanation. And the journalist? Silenced. Published nothing. But the leak was enough. Enough to confirm the impossible. That something was found in the archives. That it connected directly to Meghan and Harry. And that the decision to erase them was made immediately afterward. Coincidence? Or cover-up? What the public doesn't know about royal records. Let's get into the weeds for a moment. Because the public often misunderstands how royal archives work. They aren't just dusty rooms full of letters and tapestries. They're vaults of legacy, birth records, medical histories, personal journals, legal pacts, marital contracts, even whispered scandals that were quietly buried with forged explanations. And yes, they're heavily protected. But they're also constantly updated by royal historians and archivists who are trained to obey one central rule. Preserve the crown, not the people. It's not about individual royals. It's about the institution. So if someone poses a threat to the continuity of the royal narrative, even if they're family, they can be edited out. And in this case, they were. Cleanly, completely, clinically. But you can't delete everything. Not when some of it was already copied. Not when someone, possibly Meghan herself, was one step ahead. Because just weeks before the announcement, Another sealed envelope arrived in Montecito, and inside it, a USB, labeled C9, mirror copy. Wait, how did Meghan get a copy? This is the twist that has set the internet on fire. According to anonymous sources inside the Sussex legal team, Meghan received a package just 10 days before the palace's erasure decree. No return address, no letter, just a drive, password protected, containing what appeared to be dozens of scans from Vault C9. And on that drive, pages from the Queen's private reflections, snippets of conversations involving Charles, Camilla, even Prince Andrew, references to the bloodline rift, and, allegedly, a photo of a sealed letter addressed to MM in the event of exile. If this is true, then Meghan already knew what was coming. She just didn't know when. And now that it's happened, she may be preparing to hit back. Not with interviews, not with Oprah, but with the ultimate royal expose, one built on their own hidden history. And so, the erasure begins. At exactly 9 a.m. the morning after the vault was opened, technicians were ordered to begin cleansing the royal.uk digital archive. Mentions of Meghan and Harry were removed from the current royal family page. Official portraits were archived. Family tree diagrams were shortened. Succession numbers redacted. And in the printed books, distributed to royal libraries, schools, and embassies, new editions are being shipped out without Harry or Meghan's names. A complete surgical wipe. But here's what they didn't count on. The internet doesn't forget. Screenshots, video reels, archive.org, YouTube clips. Millions of people around the world already have the receipts. The harder the palace tries to bury the truth, the louder the backlash gets. And Charles, he may have just started a war he can't contain. Because someone else just entered the ring. A royal who's remained silent for months, but who is rumored to have kept copies of everything. Princess Anne. And she's furious. What she said in private to Charles will shock you. And what came next will crack the royal family wide open, forever. How do you erase your own son from history and still call yourself a king? That's the question burning through every headline, every whisper in Westminster, and every locked corridor of Buckingham Palace. Because King Charles III didn't just break tradition with his announcement. He broke the very code the royal family lives by. Family comes second. The crown comes first. Except this time, the crown came at the expense of blood. And what's more terrifying than a father turning on his son? A father who does it in silence. No press conference. No emotion. No explanation. Just a cold royal edict, backed by centuries of legal firepower and one buried clause the world wasn't supposed to see. But it didn't start with the archives. It started years ago, in secret, when Charles began building his quiet war. The seed of betrayal. Let's rewind to the moment everything truly began to unravel. No, not the wedding. Not Megxit. Not even the Oprah interview. But the day Harry released Spare. A memoir packed with accusations, trauma, resentment, and a narrative that painted King Charles as either absent or manipulative. But here's what you didn't see on the front page. Charles never finished the book. According to one palace aide, Charles read only 46 pages before closing it. He then reportedly stood in silence and said, "This is war by other means." He didn't scream. He didn't react publicly. But behind the scenes, he began preparing his response. Not with a press statement, but with documents, legal teams, historians, council advisors. Because if Harry was rewriting the truth for the world, Charles would rewrite it for history. Operation Continuity. That was the code name. Quiet, simple, devastating. A series of covert moves over 18 months designed to ensure the long-term survival of the monarchy's narrative, no matter the cost. It began with subtle changes to the official website. Then came modifications to succession language. The rewording of Charles's speeches to omit Harry's name. The delay of Archie and Lilibet's HRH titles. And then, behind closed doors, a question was asked. What happens when a branch of the family becomes hostile to the crown's image? The answer came from an obscure royal protocol drafted during the reign of King George V, the doctrine of historical sovereignty. It allows the sitting monarch to revise, with cause, all presentations of lineage, bloodlines, and familial affiliation in the interest of sovereign stability. In short, it gave Charles the power to erase, not from life, but from royal legacy, and no one could stop him, except maybe Princess Anne. Anne's private opposition. You see, not everyone in the royal inner circle agreed with the plan. And the loudest, most unexpected voice of opposition? The Princess Royal. Anne. Known for her duty, her discipline, her relentless public schedule. She's the one who never complains, never explains. But when she learned about Operation Continuity, she exploded. A leaked memo from a high-level royal meeting records her alleged words. You do not solve a public wound with private revenge. This will tear us apart. According to insiders, and begged Charles to pause, to consider the legacy of the Queen, to think about Diana's grandchildren. But Charles, cool, composed, allegedly responded with 6 words. I've considered everything. The line ends. It wasn't anger. It was resolve. A king who felt he had been pushed too far for too long. A king who believed that allowing Harry and Meghan to continue infecting the institution with unchecked narratives was more dangerous than the fallout of erasing them. And Anne, she walked out of the room, refusing to endorse the plan. But the machine had already started. And Charles wasn't alone. Camilla's influence. The hidden queenmaker. Enter Camilla, the queen consort who has spent decades climbing from scandal to sovereign power. Behind the scenes, royal aides describe Camilla as a strategic whisperer. Never in front, always beside. And in the case of Harry and Meghan, she wanted no reconciliation. Why? Sources point to a particularly stinging passage in Spare, where Harry accuses Camilla of planting stories in the press to boost her image. He even calls her dangerous. Camilla never responded publicly, but behind palace walls, she made her stance clear. If they defame the throne, they leave the family. And Charles listened, because while he rules the monarchy, she rules him. Camilla is said to have pushed for complete severance, no halfway measures. And when the vault was opened, revealing Queen Elizabeth's sealed note, she took it as a divine sign. One aide recalls her saying, "The Queen saw it coming. We must finish what she started." Whether or not Elizabeth meant for Harry and Meghan to be erased, we'll never know. But Camilla used the letter, used it as a weapon, and in doing so, gave Charles the one thing he needed. Justification. The night Charles signed the order. It happened in Sandringham. Snow outside. Fire roaring. Only 3 people were present. Charles, Camilla, and Lord Narham, a constitutional advisor who specializes in legacy law. The mood was tense but quiet. A single parchment sat on the desk, alongside a wax seal. At the top, royal instruction, revision of succession presentation and lineage record. In modern terms, an erasure warrant. It doesn't remove someone's blood. It just removes them from everything that matters to the crown. From now on, no mention in formal royal events. No future inclusion in coronation tapestries. No title recognition in global royal registers. No portraits in royal galleries. No official acknowledgement of their offspring in the line of succession. When Charles pressed the seal to wax, he allegedly said, "This is not vengeance. It's survival." Then he handed the document to Narham. It was done. Harry and Meghan were no longer part of the royal future. Fallout among the inner circle. The impact was immediate. Prince Edward reportedly refused to comment, but was visibly shaken at the next family gathering. Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, said to close friends, "It feels like we've erased the wrong people." Even William, who many assumed supported the move, remained distant. He didn't speak out, but he didn't celebrate either. Insiders claim he's walking a tightrope, torn between the need for institutional control and his private loyalty to Harry as a brother. But here's the twist. This may not have been Charles's final move, because during the same week he signed the erasure order, a second document was drafted. Its title? Revision of Titles and Inheritance Rights, Contingency Action. It included not just Harry and Meghan, but Archie and Lilibet. That's right, the children, the ones who had nothing to do with the scandals, nothing to do with the interviews, nothing to do with the memoir. But still, their royal ties were on the chopping block. And someone found out. Someone who'd kept their mouth shut for years. A woman once burned by the firm herself. A woman with her own reason for revenge. Diana's sister steps in, Lady Sarah McCorquodale, Diana's elder sister, once a confidant of the late princess, now living a quiet life in the countryside. But when news of the possible erasure of Diana's grandchildren reached her, she did something no one expected. She wrote a letter, a scathing, personal message addressed to King Charles. One line from that letter leaked to the press. If you erase them, you erase her. Her, Diana, the people's princess, the woman the world still mourns, and the one person whose legacy still overshadows Charles to this day. Sources claim the letter arrived just hours before Charles finalized the second decree. And what he did next? He didn't seal it. He didn't sign it. He paused. And that's where we stand now. Harry and Meghan? Erased. Archie and Lilibet? In limbo. But someone else just picked up the torch. Someone with tapes. With first-hand footage. With a plan to reveal everything. Because Meghan has been quiet for too long. And her silence is about to explode. But before she could make her move, Harry made one that shocked even her. What happens when the story you were erased from suddenly becomes the only story left to tell? Meghan didn't hear the announcement the way most of the world did. Not through a breaking news banner. Not through a notification. Not even through a call from an aide. She heard it in silence. A silence so loud it made her ears ring. Because when the palace statement dropped, those few devastating words, they no longer exist in the lineage. The phone in Montecito didn't ring at all. No warning. No courtesy. No family call. Nothing. And that's when it hit her. This wasn't just exile. This was annihilation. The moment it became real. It was early morning in California. The kids were still asleep. The house quiet. Harry wasn't in the room. Meghan was scrolling. Not aimlessly. Not casually. Scrolling with that uneasy instinct that something is wrong before you know why. Then she saw it. A headline so sharp it didn't even feel real. King Charles removes Harry and Meghan from royal lineage. At first, she laughed. A short, disbelieving laugh. Because surely that wasn't possible. Titles can be removed. Roles can be stripped. Security can be downgraded. But lineage? That's blood. That's history. That's something no press release can erase. So she clicked. And as she read, the color drained from her face. No mention of reconciliation. No soft language. No ambiguity. Just finality. They no longer exist. According to one source inside the Montecito household, Meghan sat down on the floor. Didn't cry. Didn't scream. Just stared at the screen. And whispered one sentence. So they finally did it. Shock turns physical. This wasn't performative grief. This wasn't a media moment. It was visceral. Her breathing slowed. Then sped up. Hands shaking. A sudden pressure in her chest. A staff member later described her as white as paper. She tried to stand. She couldn't. For a moment, there was genuine fear. Fear that this wasn't just emotional collapse, but something physical. Because for Meghan, this wasn't about status. It was about her children. Archie, Lilibet. What does it mean when their parents are erased? What happens to their future? Their identity? Their protection? Meghan had always known the crown could be cruel. But this? This crossed into something darker. Something deliberate. The call that never came. Here's a detail that stunned even close friends. Meghan waited. For hours. For a call from Charles. From William. From anyone. Nothing. Not even a formality. Not even a cold, official acknowledgement. She wasn't just removed from the archives. She was cut off completely. And that's when the anger began to replace the shock. Because Meghan doesn't collapse quietly. She processes. She calculates. She remembers. And according to someone who knows her well, she said, they think silence will break me. Pause. Then, they forgot who they're dealing with. Harry walks in, and everything changes. Harry came home mid-morning. He already knew. He'd seen it on his phone while driving. He walked in expecting chaos. Tears. Panic. Rage. Instead, he found Meghan sitting perfectly still. Calm. Too calm. That's when he knew this wasn't a breakdown. It was a turning point. According to a source, Meghan looked up at him and asked one question. Did you know this was coming? Harry didn't answer right away. And in that pause, everything cracked. Because that pause told her something important. That Harry had been warned. Maybe not in full. Maybe not explicitly. But enough. Enough that he wasn't blindsided the way she was. And that hurt cut deeper than the announcement itself. A marriage under pressure. This is the part no one wants to talk about. Royal exile doesn't just test institutions. It tests marriages. Harry has always been emotionally reactive. Protective. Explosive when pushed. Meghan is strategic. Controlled. Forward-thinking. In moments like this, those differences don't complement each other. They collide. Sources say Meghan demanded to know what Harry had been told. Harry insisted he didn't know it would go this far. She didn't believe him. Not fully. Because months earlier, she'd warned him. She'd said the palace doesn't do half measures. That if they moved, they would move decisively. Harry had insisted there would always be a line Charles wouldn't cross. Meghan knew better. And now, that line had been obliterated. The children questioned. This is where the collapse truly set in. Because once the initial shock passed, Meghan asked the question that haunted her. What about the kids? Not rhetorically, legally, historically, psychologically. What does it mean for two children to be erased from a lineage before they're old enough to understand what lineage even is? Archie had already faced confusion at school. Lilibet had never even seen the palace that bore her name. And now, their grandparents had effectively declared them irrelevant, invisible, unworthy of record. Meghan reportedly broke down at that point. Not theatrically, not loudly, but quietly. The kind of crying that scares the people who love you. The kind that comes from betrayal, not sadness. A mother's instinct kicks in, and then something changed. Meghan stopped crying, wiped her face, stood up. This wasn't about her anymore. This was about protecting her children from becoming footnotes, or worse, erased narratives controlled by people who despise their parents. According to one insider, Meghan said, "If they're rewriting history, I'm publishing mine." That sentence is important because it marks the moment Meghan stopped reacting and started preparing. The evidence she'd been saving. Here's the contradiction the palace never accounted for. Meghan doesn't forget. She documents. Texts, emails, voice notes, videos. She learned early that memory is fragile, but records are not. According to multiple sources, Meghan had been quietly archiving interactions for years. Not for revenge, for protection, because she understood something the palace underestimated. If you don't control the story, the institution will rewrite it for you. And now, that rewrite had officially begun. But she had receipts. Not gossip, not hearsay, time-stamped, verifiable material. And something else, something far more dangerous. The letter she never expected to receive. Just hours after the announcement, a courier arrived. No insignia, no name, just a sealed envelope. Inside, a single handwritten note. 6 words. Don't let them erase her. No signature. But Meghan knew exactly who it referred to. Diana, the woman whose shadow still looms over the monarchy. The woman whose story was nearly erased too, until the world refused to let it happen. Meghan reportedly stared at the note for a long time, then folded it carefully and placed it inside a drawer she rarely opens. The drawer where she keeps the things that matter. Public silence, private strategy. To the outside world, Meghan said nothing. No tweet, no statement, no appearance. The silence drove commentators wild. Was she broken? Was she planning another interview? Was she negotiating behind the scenes? What they didn't see was the war room forming quietly around her. Legal advisors, media consultants, a historian. Yes, a historian. Because if the palace wanted to rewrite lineage, Meghan was prepared to challenge it with documented history. But she wouldn't rush. She wouldn't react emotionally. She'd learned that lesson already. Instead, she would wait and let the palace make the next mistake. The palace underestimates her, again. Here's the irony. While commentators speculated about Meghan's collapse, the palace assumed the same thing. That she'd be overwhelmed. That she'd retreat. That she'd lash out emotionally and discredit herself. They thought the erasure had worked. They thought the story was over. They were wrong. Because Meghan wasn't collapsing anymore. She was regrouping. And while Charles believed he had won a silent war, Meghan was about to change the battlefield. But she wouldn't strike first. Because Harry had just made a call. A call that no one expected. A call that would force the palace into open confrontation. And once that happened, there would be no going back. But what Harry said on that call would ignite the next explosion. And it would shatter what little unity remained. What do you say to your father when you find out he just erased you from history? Prince Harry had been angry before. He'd yelled at paparazzi. He'd confronted royal aides. He'd walked away from the only life he'd ever known. But nothing compared to the fury he felt that morning. Because when the royal decree hit the world stage, it didn't just exile Meghan and himself. It erased his name, his existence, from the very institution he was born into. There was no phone call, no warning, no courtesy, only a statement sent to the world. They no longer exist in the lineage. And for Harry, that meant war. The kind of war that doesn't involve tanks or bullets, but something far more dangerous. A legacy war. And he was ready to fight it, with words that would shake the walls of Windsor. The boiling point. When Harry saw the palace announcement, he didn't speak at first. He simply stared at the words, then reread them, then looked again. And then, according to insiders, he said only 2 words. He did it. There was no confusion, no ambiguity, no benefit of the doubt. Harry knew immediately that this wasn't an accident. It wasn't a media leak. It wasn't some obscure bureaucratic maneuver. It was intentional, deliberate, calculated. And it came from the one man who once swore, after Diana's death, to protect what was left of their fractured family. Harry walked straight into his study, closed the door, locked it. And then he picked up the phone. The call was made through a secure line. The number? Clarence House. The person who answered? Charles's private secretary. And what Harry said first wasn't hello. It was, put him on. Now. Charles takes the call. It took nearly 10 minutes before the call was transferred. Charles was reportedly in a meeting with Lord Chamberlain when the message was delivered. He paused, took a breath, then asked his aides to leave the room. He knew what was coming. But he didn't know how much Harry already knew. The line clicked. No pleasantries, no greeting, just silence. Then Harry said, "Did you mean every word of that statement?" Charles's reply, "You've given me no choice." That's when the dam broke. Harry loses control. According to a source familiar with the transcript, yes, senior royal calls are logged for documentation. Harry launched into a tirade that lasted nearly 4 minutes uninterrupted. He accused Charles of betrayal, of cowardice, of choosing image over blood. Here are just a few lines leaked from that call. "You didn't just cut me off, you made me a ghost. What kind of father wipes his son off the family tree? You've made Mum a liar. She believed we'd be protected after she was gone." There was shouting, swearing. At one point, the audio recorder picked up what sounded like Harry slamming something against his desk. Sources claim he was pacing so violently that aides outside the room became concerned. But Charles didn't raise his voice. Not once. Instead, he listened, waited, and then said, "You brought this upon yourself." That sentence. It flipped everything. Because in that moment, Harry realized something chilling. This wasn't just punishment for Meghan, or even for Spare. This was personal, a reckoning that had been years in the making, and Charles had finally decided. After all the interviews, books, Netflix specials, and accusations, to stop playing the father and start playing the king. A father turned monarch. Here's what you need to understand about Charles. He's waited his entire life to wear that crown. 7 decades in the shadow of his mother. Mocked by the press, haunted by his marriage to Diana, constantly questioned by the public. When he finally became king, he was determined to do one thing: control the narrative, rebuild the monarchy, make the crown invincible. And in his mind, Harry had become the greatest threat to that plan. Because Harry didn't just walk away. He started talking. And Charles knew that as long as Harry's story was considered official, the monarchy would always be vulnerable. So he did what monarchs do. He removed the threat. He redefined the story, even if it meant cutting out his own blood. The threat Harry made. Back to the call. Once Harry realized his father wasn't backing down, his tone shifted. From rage to threat. According to sources, Harry said, "You think this is over? I haven't even told half of what I know." Then, "There are recordings, Dad. Diaries. Documents. You really want this fight?" That's when Charles reportedly spoke the only harsh sentence of the entire call. "You have no idea what you're risking." To which Harry allegedly replied, "Neither do you." That moment changed everything. Because now the palace wasn't just facing public criticism. They were facing a PR war. And this time, the Sussexes had ammunition. What Harry has on record. Let's talk about what's been rumored for years, but never confirmed until now. According to multiple insiders close to the couple, Harry and Meghan began documenting everything the moment they left royal duties. Audio recordings of meetings, screenshots of private conversations, email threads between legal teams, Meghan's handwritten diary entries detailing interactions with senior royals, even voice memos of private breakdowns and arguments, stored securely on cloud servers. One source even claimed they were building a safety net in case the palace ever turned on them. That net is now a weapon. And now, with their public erasure confirmed, Harry is considering releasing some of it. Not as a revenge play, but as a counter-history. A version of events the monarchy doesn't control. And with the public already doubting Charles's judgment, this could be catastrophic for the palace. Charles doubles down. But the king isn't bluffing either. After the call, Charles met privately with his crisis team. He instructed lawyers to prepare preemptive injunctions in the event Harry attempts to release confidential information. But more chilling, he told the Royal Communications Office to draft a secondary press statement, one that defends the erasure as a constitutional necessity. In short, he's not afraid of Harry's threats. He's ready for them. He's betting that the public will side with the crown over the couple that walked away. But that bet? It's risky, because the world has already seen what happens when Diana's son is silenced. And they don't forget easily. The unexpected leak. 3 hours after Harry hung up, a mysterious audio file was uploaded anonymously to a dark web server. Only 27 seconds long, but clear enough to pick up the following words. They've erased us. And they're smiling while they do it. The voice? Allegedly Meghan. It hasn't been verified, but it spread like wildfire. Reddit, Twitter, YouTube. Within an hour, #RoyalErase trended in 17 countries. And for the first time since the Platinum Jubilee, the monarchy was on defense. Because the world had questions. Is this legal? Is this ethical? If Harry and Meghan can be erased, who's next? And just when the chaos couldn't get worse, someone inside the palace flipped. An insider. A former royal aide. And what they leaked next would explode everything. Because hidden inside the same files used to erase Harry was a clause. A clause that referenced Diana. And a secret that was never meant to surface. What if I told you the British monarchy has a hidden clause, so secret, so ancient, that it gives the king the power to erase a family member from history and never explain why? It sounds like fiction, but it's real. And it's been used before. Once. Quietly. Silently. With no press release. No scandal. No coverage. Until now. Because buried deep within the Royal Marquess Charter of 1936, under a little-known section titled Protective Amendments to Lineal Sovereignty, is a clause so dangerous, so powerful, that even senior royals aren't told about it until absolutely necessary. Clause 17b, also known among the select few as the sovereign's discretionary erasure. And it may be the very clause Charles invoked to wipe Harry and Meghan from the royal lineage without a vote, without consent, and without precedent. But why was it created in the first place? And more importantly, why has it just been activated? A clause born in scandal. Let's jump back to 1936, the year that changed everything. King Edward VIII abdicated the throne to marry American divorcee Wallis Simpson, sparking one of the greatest constitutional crises in modern monarchy. But behind the drama, behind the headlines, something else happened. Something hidden. Parliament demanded a safeguard. A way to protect the monarchy from internal threats, especially those posed by rogue royals who might embarrass or endanger the crown in future generations. So, under immense pressure from both the government and the monarchy's inner legal circle, a secret charter was drafted. This wasn't meant for public eyes. It was not taught at Sandhurst, not circulated to family. Only 4 people reportedly had access to the full document after it was signed: the reigning monarch, the Lord Chancellor, the keeper of royal archives, and the Crown's legal advisor at the time. Clause 17b stated, where a member of the royal house is determined, by sovereign decree, to pose a substantial threat to the integrity, dignity, or lawful perception of the Crown, said member may, by executive order, be erased from the formal lineage, title acknowledgement, and historical presentation thereof. Let that sink in. Erased. Not exiled. Not disowned. Erased. And it happened once before. But it was covered up so effectively that the public never knew. Until the aide inside the palace. Yes, that anonymous whistleblower leaked a forgotten file labeled Use of Clause 17b. Case of Lady Eleanor Marlowe, 1943. The Lady Marlowe precedent. Lady Eleanor who? Exactly. You're not supposed to know her name. But if the file is authentic, and we have reason to believe it is, Lady Eleanor Marlowe was the illegitimate daughter of Prince George, Duke of Kent. A brilliant scholar. Outspoken. Charismatic. Progressive. And in 1943, She threatened to publish a collection of personal letters exchanged between her and the Duke. Those letters allegedly contained scathing critiques of the monarchy, romantic allusions to an unsuitable match, and veiled references to Nazi sympathies within the royal elite. When her publisher mysteriously shut down the project, Lady Eleanor disappeared from public view, and her name removed from every royal mention. No public death notice, no official family tree entry, no archived photographs. She was erased. Thanks to Clause 17b, that case was buried so deeply it would have stayed hidden forever, if not for Harry. Because now, experts believe that Charles invoked the same clause to remove Harry and Meghan from history. Legally, irrevocably. How the clause was activated. Here's how it works. Under the clause, the monarch must issue a handwritten declaration, signed and sealed. Consult the Lord Chamberlain for a formal review. Enter the declaration into the private sovereign ledger, a book that is never made public. Secure 2 Privy Council endorsements. Once completed, the process is final, not subject to appeal, not subject to judicial review. And here's where it gets even more disturbing. The clause allows the monarch to extend the erasure to immediate descendants if he deems the threat intergenerational, meaning Archie and Lilibet, children, innocent, young, now in danger of being written out of an empire they were born into, not by accident, by decree. The hidden meeting at Balmoral. According to leaked records from a royal logbook, on March 11, 2025, King Charles held a secret meeting at Balmoral Castle with 3 people. Lord Chamberlain Andrew Parker, Senior Legal Advisor Sir James Dalton, and the Keeper of Archives, Lady Evelyn Carr. The agenda? Review of Clause 17b applicability in light of recent public provocations. 2 weeks later, the erasure announcement was made. Coincidence? Hardly. One aide later described the king's mood during that meeting as haunted but resolute. It said he looked out the window, clutching a copy of Spare, and whispered, "He left me no choice." But that's not how others inside the palace saw it. Some claimed Charles had crossed a line that even Elizabeth II never dared to approach. Even after Diana, even after Andrew, she never activated Clause 17b. But Charles? He just did. And the consequences could ripple for generations. The secret within the clause, Diana's name. Now we get to the most explosive part. Because what the leaked aid also revealed is that within the sovereign ledger, alongside the clause Charles activated, was a reference, a buried footnote, to Diana, the Princess of Wales. Apparently, a note left by Queen Elizabeth herself in 1998, shortly after Diana's death, was entered into the sovereign ledger as a precautionary marker. The note warned, "Let no child of Diana ever be removed from our records, lest the monarchy bear the shame twice." That note was logged, initialed, archived, and yet, it was ignored, which means Charles had to override his own mother's express instruction in order to enact this clause. Think about that. The king didn't just erase his son. He erased Diana's legacy, again. And this time, there's no turning back. Unless someone forces his hand. Unless someone uses that override against him. Legal scholars speak out. As news of the clause leak spread, constitutional scholars around the UK began weighing in. Some called it dangerous overreach. Others labeled it monarchical overcompensation for media embarrassment. But one statement stood out. Professor Helen Troughton, University of Edinburgh, said, "This is less about legality and more about optics. If Charles invokes ancient doctrine to erase a bloodline, he may win in the short term. But the monarchy will lose its moral license to rule." Translation: he might win the battle, but he could lose the war. Because even in a constitutional monarchy, perception is everything. And if the public believes their king is erasing his enemies, even his own children, that's a monarchy in crisis. And someone's about to take advantage of that crisis. Meghan's legal countermove. In California, Meghan's legal team is now quietly assembling a response, but not to reinstate titles, not to gain back public favor. Their goal? To legally challenge the validity of Clause 17b in the modern era. According to US and UK advisors working in tandem, they believe that if the clause can be framed as a violation of international family rights and modern anti-discrimination statutes, then the erasure order can be symbolically, if not legally, undone. How? by exposing it publicly and forcing Parliament to weigh in. Because if the court of public opinion turns, Charles's secret weapon could backfire spectacularly. And remember, Meghan has documentation, receipts, witnesses, perhaps even footage of conversations with senior royals regarding her children's titles and place in the family. If even a portion of that goes public, the phrase "they no longer exist in the lineage" may be burned into the monarchy's biggest scandal since Diana's infamous 1995 interview. And speaking of Diana, there's one more twist. A twist so unexpected that even Charles reportedly turned pale upon hearing it. Because a private archive was just unsealed, one that Diana herself ordered to be opened 25 years after her death. And the contents are about to blow the palace into open warfare. What's inside that archive could destroy the very foundation of the erasure clause. And what came next would undo decades of royal control and finally bring Diana's voice back into the story. Is silence always neutral, or is it the loudest answer of all? As the royal archives burned metaphorically with erasure orders and secret clauses, there was one figure whose response, or lack thereof, was deafening. Prince William, the heir, the future king, the brother of the man who had just been deleted from royal history. When the world turned to him for reaction, he said nothing. No press statement, no interviews, no leaks from Kensington Palace. Nothing. But make no mistake, this was not indifference. This was strategy, because William wasn't just staying silent. He was calculating, watching, letting others take the heat while he planned his next move. And what that move might be could determine whether the monarchy survives or collapses. The ice between brothers. Let's be honest, William and Harry's relationship was fractured long before the erasure announcement. But even in their worst moments, after the Oprah interview, after Spare, after the docuseries, William never pushed for complete disownment. He was furious, yes, embarrassed, likely, protective of the institution. But deep down, there was always the flicker of brotherhood. Until now, sources close to the palace say William was not informed about the specific timing of Charles's announcement. He was briefed, but not consulted. Why? Because Charles knew that William's answer might have been complicated. Because William isn't just a son. He's a father, a future king, and in many ways, he's Harry with a crown. So when the world watched for his reaction and got silence instead, that wasn't avoidance. That was containment. Because something had shifted behind closed doors. William wasn't defending Harry, but he also wasn't defending the decision to erase him either. Behind the curtains of Kensington Palace, inside his residence, aides describe William as hyper-focused, unusually quiet, and prone to long private walks through the gardens. He asked for all media monitoring reports. He read the reactions himself. He watched the public opinion graphs fluctuate in real time. Then, he ordered a meeting, but not with his father. With his personal crisis advisor, Simon Trentham, a former MI6 intelligence officer turned royal strategist. Their conversation, according to one aide, centered on a single question. What happens if this turns the public against us? Because William knew something Charles might have ignored. Harry still has public sympathy. He's the rebel, the wounded son, the one Diana shielded. And erasing that figure from history, especially with a silent heir doing nothing, could trigger a crisis of faith in the crown itself. So William asked another question. What if I say nothing, but do something? And that's when the secret meetings began. The meeting with Kate. Here's where things get even more interesting. Because just 2 days after Charles invoked Clause 17b, Kate Middleton reportedly had a private sit-down with her husband. No aides, no advisors, just them. According to someone within the residence, Kate posed a single, emotional question. What happens when Charlotte asks why Uncle Harry isn't in the family tree? That moment shattered something in William. Because this wasn't just about tradition anymore. It was about memory, about children, about how the next generation understands loyalty. Kate reportedly didn't push William to act publicly, but she implored him to think beyond duty, to think like a brother, like a father, like a son. And for the first time in weeks, William reportedly said, I need to see the archives myself. The midnight visit. At 2:47 a.m. the following night, Prince William entered the secure vault room at Windsor. He was escorted by a lone archivist and a security officer. He stayed for just under 90 minutes. No one knows exactly what he read, but sources say he left visibly disturbed. One report claims he was overheard saying, "That wasn't Mum's intent. That's not what she wanted." Another claims he asked to see Diana's private journal entries, some of which had been reclassified following the erasure. He was denied access. Denied. The future king. Denied access to his own mother's writings, because those writings had now become sensitive to the stability of the crown. Translation: they contradicted the narrative Charles had just made law. And William? He finally understood the full cost of silence. A subtle rebellion begins. Here's where the public missed the clues. Within 48 hours of his vault visit, William made two subtle but seismic moves. He refused to sign a formal addendum that confirmed the updated family tree, without Harry and Meghan. He instructed his staff to pause all ceremonial print materials for the upcoming coronation anniversary. Officially, it was a logistical issue. Unofficially, William wasn't ready to sign off on a version of royal history that he no longer fully believed in. But he still didn't speak, because William's power isn't in words. It's in presence. And his next public appearance said more than any statement ever could. The memorial service moment. At a veterans' memorial service the following week, William arrived wearing a small, rarely seen lapel pin. At first, few noticed, but zoomed-in photos revealed it clearly. It was Diana's rose, a subtle tribute, but more importantly, Harry had once worn the same pin during their 1997 tour in South Africa, with Diana by their side. The media caught on quickly. Is William sending a message? Diana's boys still connected? Symbolic act of defiance? Kensington Palace refused to comment. But one insider confirmed. It wasn't accidental, because William knew the power of images. He knew that a gesture, silent, reverent, emotional, would ripple through a population already questioning the palace's morality. And that ripple became a wave. The public turns slightly. Polls shifted. Fast. For the first time since the announcement, approval for the monarchy dipped below 50% among 18 to 35-year-olds. Not because they supported Harry and Meghan's every move, but because they understood pain. They related to being cut off, disowned, gaslight by family systems that value control over compassion. And they were watching William, waiting, because if he stood up, they'd follow. If he challenged the erasure, it wouldn't just be news. It would be change. But William didn't speak. Yet, because he knew, one wrong move, and his own future might be on the line. The secret draft. Here's the cliffhanger you didn't see coming. According to someone inside Kensington's communications office, William began writing a speech. Not a public address, but a contingency. A break glass in case of emergency statement. In it, he reportedly acknowledges the complexities of modern royal life, the emotional weight of family division, and the belief that truth and loyalty must evolve with time. It's never been read aloud. It hasn't been leaked, but it exists, waiting. And if the public tide turns fully? If Charles is further cornered? If Meghan and Harry unleash their proof? William may read that speech, and when he does, it could signal the most dramatic royal pivot since Edward VIII. Because a silent heir is still an heir, and his silence may not last much longer. But before William can act, Kate makes a move that shocks even her husband. A move that will force every royal to choose sides. And no one sees it coming. What happens when the quietest royal finally speaks? And no one's ready for what she has to say? Catherine, Princess of Wales, has always played the long game. The stabilizer. The smiling bridge between generations. The woman who understood from the beginning that survival in the firm isn't about loud rebellion. It's about carefully placed power. But after the erasure of Harry and Meghan, something inside her shifted. Because while the world focused on Charles's decree and William's silence, Kate saw something far more dangerous happening. The family she married into was eating itself alive. And her children, George, Charlotte, and Louis, were watching it unfold. So she did something no one expected. She picked up the phone and called the one person she hadn't spoken to in over a year, Meghan Markle. The decision that made history. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't filmed. There was no camera crew, no PR team. It was 7:12 p.m. in London. Kate was in her private sitting room, alone. The door was closed. Her hand shook slightly as she held the phone, because she knew this call could go one of two ways. A new chapter, or a nuclear detonation. But Kate wasn't calling for reconciliation. Not yet. She was calling for something far more pressing. Damage control. The missed calls. Kate tried twice before Megan answered. The first time, no response. The second, went to voicemail. The third, a voice. Quiet. Guarded. Hello. Kate paused. It's Catherine. I thought it was time. A long silence. 10, maybe 15 seconds. Then Megan replied. Time for what? And just like that, history tilted on its axis. Two women, rivals in the public eye, painted as antagonists by tabloids, on a call no one ever thought would happen. Not since the tears. Not since the Oprah interview. Not since the "it was actually me who cried" line that broke the internet. But this wasn't about the past. This was about the present, and about stopping a future no one wanted. The tension you could cut with a knife. According to a source close to Megan's camp, the first 3 minutes of the call were painful. Awkward. Clipped. Civil barely. Megan's voice was cold. Kate's cautious. But then Kate said something that broke the tension. My children are asking about yours. Silence. They don't understand why Archie and Lilibet aren't part of the pictures in the palace books. That hit Megan hard. Because for all the drama, all the legal posturing, all the public statements, this was the real cost. Children growing up in parallel lives, thinking they weren't connected, that they didn't matter. And from that moment forward, the conversation changed.